A video that I didn't plan on making. I have a long list of other games I wanted to cover first, but a few weeks ago I was looking for something fun to play in my spare time. I wanted something that'd give me some nice dopamine hits that I could play casually to relax with. So I downloaded old school RuneScape, created my first ever Ironman character, and what followed was a 2-week gaming binge where within 10 days I had 120 hours of playtime and
10 days, 120 hours of playtime
to the game. Basically log into old school,
you can already tell where the video's gonna go.
Do tutorial island, and at the end I'm given the choice to make my character an Ironman or just a standard character. I decided to try Ironman for the first time because this game mode is absolutely
okay. So there's like this opinion that's always existed since Ironman mode, which is like it's really good, but like if you're new to the game, make a main first and then make an Ironman. And that was me. Like I made a main before I even knew Ironman existed, but I honestly, being an Ironman player, would say just make an Ironman like right out the gate. I know it's very risky. If you're very casual, maybe don't do that. But Ironman has become way more accessible over the years and will continue to become more accessible. They're adding more things in the early game, things in the mid game that will make the transition and the progression a lot smoother, where I feel like you could jump into Ironman. And there's so many resources if you need help. And there's so many videos that you can use. I would recommend doing that, or doing a group Ironman even with some friends.
You cannot trade with other players. Every item in the game
it's the best. It's the most pure,
and
enjoyable way to play the game.
Every accomplishment feels earned. I do have a standard main account for OSRS, but I kind of lost interest in that.
My main got to I think 1749. I got to a boss called Zulrah, killed it a bunch, and it was a lot of good money at the time. And I got in the mindset of like, why would I do anything else other than just kill this boss? And that actually stopped me from playing because I felt like I had reached a point where I would just continue to do this and then buy items, continue to do this and then buy items. Where when I made the Iron Man, that's obviously not going to be the case, because if I want something from somewhere, I got to go get it. I got to get the levels for it. I got to learn how to do the encounter, etc.
Since I could skip a lot of content by buying bonds, selling them for GP, and at that point any valuable drop you do get doesn't feel as impactful. Within the first few hours of playing my Ironman, I could feel myself becoming more and more
He's
addicted.
using the Quest Helper plugin,
anything during this time because I was playing for fun.
Also another
content,
reason why
but every
you could probably just make an Ironman or any account.
Every tiny upgrade, the dopamine was nuts. It was also during this time where
so unlike main mode, every upgrade you get on an Ironman tends to like really mean a lot. Like an upgraded pickaxe or an upgraded weapon is like a huge deal and can carry you a long way. Sometimes when you're playing a main, a couple 100k as a gift from a friend or something like that basically skips like 50 hours for you, and it's nice, and you get a dopamine hit right in the beginning, but then you kind of lose a sense of purpose. He's using the Quest Helper plugin, which is another reason to play RuneScape in general. This plugin's amazing. Quests are amazing in old school, better than pretty much any quest system that exists. But they can be tricky in terms of like there's so many items and so many interactions you don't necessarily know what to do. Quest Helper really kind of handholds you through it there. And quests are extremely valuable on an account early on because they instead of grinding for levels, for example, they will pretty much get your levels boosted way beyond what you could do in that time frame while completing quests and unlocking new content, because content tends to be hidden behind quest rewards.
Really saw how different old school RuneScape is in 2024 compared to a few years ago.
Yes, very
First
different.
of all, the Runlight plugin client is now officially supported by Jagex and can be
Runlight's
opened
a must.
directly through the RuneScape
right now,
launcher.
base client's getting better,
of the player
but
base
Runlight's
play
a
the
must.
game through Runlight, and the plugins you can get for it nowadays have literally transformed the game. One of the biggest complaints about OSRS I see from my viewers is to do with the graphics being too bad. Well, not anymore, because if you enable HD, increase the draw distance, enable animation smoothing, and maybe change the UI a bit, the game actually looks like it has modern stylized graphics.
Modern, like 2000, like, you know, 15
also,
modern,
if you like
maybe.
the old style,
but it does help.
That's improved if you enable the GPU plugin, which makes the game look less pixelated. Runelight also gives you better camera options, much more in-depth UI customization, change the controls, highlight tiles and objects.
I don't know where we'd be without Runelight.
Think of
honestly.
it, there's probably a plugin for it. But the biggest way Runelight's plugins have changed my experience with RuneScape this time around is with my favourite plugin.
Shout out to Gear Loadouts.
The Quest Helper. RuneScape has the best quests in the entire MMO genre, it's not even close. But admittedly, I've always followed quest guides to do them because they're quite in-depth, often require obscure items, and sometimes take hours to complete. With Quest Helper, it literally allows you to turn your brain off, follow the instructions, and it will hold your hand and
yeah, it'll hold your hand, and you could still enjoy the quest even if you use this. So there's space barring in quests, which is just when you're talking to an NPC, you hold space bar and it kind of skips the dialogue. I actually like reading the dialogue in the quest, so if you want a combination of still getting like a fulfilling quest experience, but also like not getting stuck, you could use Quest Helper, but still read the dialogue options and kind of understand what's happening. And sometimes that'll just help you determine what's next even without using the Quest Helper.
Until the quest is complete, letting you know if you've made a mistake or forgot an item. For someone like me who's already done certain quests a bunch of times on other accounts, this made the entire process of progressing a new character so much more enjoyable. I went so hard on the questing with my Ironman for like 8 days straight.
Look at him fly!
And very quickly got to over 1,000 total level with over 70 quests completed. I've never spammed quests in RuneScape so fast before, but thanks to Quest Helper, it was actually fun to do so. Unfortunately for my Ironman, he lost his hardcore status super early. I was doing the waterfall quest and didn't actually realise the moss giants inside the tomb can hit a 14, so they max hit me and I had my first death on day 2. I probably should have started.
Listen, if you die to the giants, you're meant to die somewhere along the line. Hardcore is very difficult. I actually never made a hardcore, so I'll never be on the high scores for that. I have a standard Ironman. But, I mean, it's worth making in the beginning just to see how far you get, but don't feel bad if you lose your hardcore status, because it kind of unlocks a lot of the game all of a sudden when you do lose it.
Over at that point, but I decided not to, as I wanted to learn more about the game so that when I do decide to do a hardcore Ironman again in the future,
hardcore is good for an additional count in the future.
Another big change I noticed with OSRS in 2024 is to do with the training methods and XP rates for skills. The last time I played this game, Rune Crafting was notorious for being one of the shittest, most boring skills to train in the entire game. It was basically a meme. But nowadays, for me at least, that's not the case thanks to a new Rune Crafting minigame Jagex added called Guardians of the Rift. I really enjoy this minigame, and it's actually made Rune Crafting one of my favourite skills now.
When Guardians of the Rift came out, I think I jumped from like 82 to like 90 something pretty much in the first week or two. It's a really good minigame, great rewards. The outfit it gives you makes rune crafting better outside of the game, and even just the way you play this and you go to different altars, you're actually going to the altars in the game itself. So even though it's a mini game, it still has interactions with the rest of the world. Like you could be crafting at like the water altar in the outside in the world, and if you're in the Guardians of the Rift world and that altar's open, you'll see a bunch of people run in and you'll be like, what the heck is happening? You'll think it's like a bot farm, but it's actually people from this game interacting with the outside world, which is a really cool way to do mini games. Like incorporate it with the rest of the world.
There's also new methods for training farming with farming contracts, hunter with hunting contracts, as well as a bunch of other new methods that I haven't even had the chance to try yet. As I continued to play my Ironman, I found myself digging deeper and deeper.
Contracts are pretty good. Contracts are a way to vary up your gameplay. It's kind of like a Slayer. So you get like a task, and then you got to go complete that task. So for farming, it's like plant this. For Slayer, it's go kill this many of this, and for Hunter, which is the most recent one, you have to go hunt stuff and try to get like a rare piece from them. And it's good because it allows you to vary up your gameplay when training those methods, especially Hunter and Slayer. But it's I could see them maybe going too far and making everything a contract. I wouldn't like that necessarily, but I think the way they did Hunter contracts was actually fairly it's actually really cool, and I got my Hunter finally to 99. I'm a very, very, very slow maxer, and the way I'm going to be maxing is when RuneScape releases new content, like the Hunter Guild, I'm going to go do it and get the levels while I enjoy it, which is what happened with Hunter, what happened with, Rune Crafting is now at like 90-something. I'm just waiting. There's going to be an Herblore minigame soon. I'm already 99 Herblore, I guess, but I'm going to be, making my potions, then basically just try to have fun with the new content towards maxing.
deeper into the RuneScape rabbit hole, looking at all the stuff that would be waiting for me at endgame.
Another mini game?
If you're into PvE or PvM as it's known as in RuneScape, there's an insane amount of stuff.
I'm a PvM.
You've got 3 different raids: Slayer bosses, world bosses, instanced bosses, mini game bosses, and skilling bosses. To complete all of this stuff, especially on an Ironman, we're talking about thousands of hours of progress, and that's not even mentioning the time it'd take to actually get good enough to beat the hardest content the game has to offer. On the PvP side of things, the main thing
there's this misconception that the game is easy because of the way it looks. It's extremely complex. To get good takes a long time.
I've dipped my toes into since
PvP
returning is the
PvM,
last man standing game mode, which is super fun and a great way to get better at PKing without risking anything,
do this.
as well as PvP worlds, which allow you to duel with friends in whatever gear setup, inventory.
There's something in the game called the collection log, so even if you don't play an Ironman, you can still get a lot of satisfaction from getting different items around the game, which are logged in something called the collection log. Last man standing, which is PvP, which is what he's talking about, you can buy a lot of things afterwards that are collection log items.
Or stats that you like. I especially love these PvP worlds because I remember back in the day when I used to play,
I think
I used to spend a lot of money
collection
on
log
GP
really
for supplies to
got people both into Ironman and just
for new
even
players
just
looking
mains.
to get into old school RuneScape's PvP,
Just getting them more
you can basically
into
learn
getting different
everything
items and
with
doing
almost
different
no
content.
barrier to entry nowadays. Then when you're finally
Look at him
good
go,
enough, you can go deep
destroying
into
those
the
bots.
wilderness to hunt for other players to take their sweet, sweet loot. RuneScape's quite a polarizing game for people who have
That's
never
the
played
HT
it
plugin.
before. If you've never played the game before, you'd probably take one look at it and think, is that it? It's literally just turn-based auto-attack combat. You click on something and it dies.
Yeah.
Where's the skill in that? Which is a fair comment to make, but one thing you'll quickly learn is that despite seeming incredibly simple, the skill ceiling in RuneScape is probably one of the highest in the MMO genre.
Probably.
For me to explain exactly why this is the case, it'd take an entire video on its own explaining things like the tick rate,
Take a
prayer
series,
flicking,
honestly.
how movement works, and a bunch of other stuff that'll sound like a foreign language to the casual.
If you're trying to get into PvM for old school, I always say that there are like 3 main pillars that you need to try to get good at, okay? That is gear switches, being able to switch your gear as quick as you can. If you need to practice that, practice cleaning herbs. It's essentially the same thing. Prayer switches, switching your prayer, going to your prayer book, melee, piety, etc. And then the last one is movement. Getting very comfortable with how your character moves, understanding that if you turn on True Tile Indicator, it shows where your character actually is. They're usually 2 tiles ahead of you when you're running. Just understanding how movement works. Hallowed Sepulchre is really good for teaching that. If you can master those 3 things, you'll actually become a really, really good PvMer. So if you're struggling with PvMing right now, focus on those 3 pillars and use F keys so that you can switch between tabs.
Viewer that typically watches my videos. So instead, I'll just say that on the high end of
that deserves
RuneScape
a
gameplay,
full video.
the game plays like an FPS combined with a rhythm game rather than a typical MMO.
Definitely rhythm.
Look at this clip from one of the best PKs in the game. Just look at the speed of the mouse and the precision of the clicks. It's so insane that it's hard to even wrap my head around. Here's a clip from one of the best PvM players taking on the Awakened Leviathan boss. Once again, insane click precision, perfect player movement, and incredible
which is very
timing.
common there.
RuneScape has content for players of all levels, but definitely don't let the game's simplicity fool you into thinking there's no
movement and
challenge at
switches.
endgame, because that couldn't be further from the truth, and honestly, most players will never become good enough to beat all of the content. So is RuneScape worth playing in 2024? Is it too late to start playing if you've never played the game before? Honestly, one of the main reasons I returned to the game was that I realised RuneScape is simply a timeless MMO. In terms of actual design, how everything in the game is interconnected from skills to quests, level requirements, items and progression, it's simply the most perfectly designed MMORPG that's ever been made. Old school RuneScape will still be here.
He just called it the most perfectly designed MMO ever to be made. That's crazy. I know he's a huge fan of the game and he's been in a long time, but that's just crazy to hear. There are a couple really, I'm sure WoW in its peak would be like, considered the best MMO ever made, etc. But yeah, this is definitely could be the longest standing MMO of all time, specifically the old school version.
Here in 10 years time, it's constantly being updated, and my biggest regret is that I didn't play Ironman mode sooner or keep up to...
The only threat to, I think, old school RuneScape when I think about 10 years from now is the player base tends to be older players who have played before. Now, nostalgia is not a huge factor anymore. It definitely gets people back into the game, but I wonder how many, like, once we're all older, how many newer players are going to get into this game, and is that enough for the population to continue to grow? I'm hoping so, especially with how its reputation is continually improving.
To date with all of the new content that's been added, it's a game that you can play as actively or as AFK as you want. Want to do 200 APM?
What's amazing about the content in RuneScape, right, is that because it's been around, let's say, since however long, and then this version since 2013, there's so much to do, and every new update is adds to the game. It's not something, very few things become irrelevant in old school RuneScape where it's like, oh, you no longer need to do this because something new came out. Most content is still relevant at some point in your account, so it continues to grow. So imagine 10 years from now how much content there's going to be. This is why I say jumping into Ironman is a lot more accessible now. There's so many different things you can do now. I love games that have constantly been around for a long time and have grown. So I think of games like RuneScape. I think of games like Pokemon, where it's like, sure, they haven't really evolved their formula much, but the amount of depth that goes into Pokemon, training Pokemon, EVs, breeding, the sheer amount of Pokemon. I think of Monster Hunter, just how many different monsters there are, the weapons, the complexity of combos. Just the longer the game has stayed around and continued to build, the just more rich content there is. And RuneScape's definitely in that.
Raids or PKing, you can do that. Want to AFK train combat, cut trees or fish whilst playing another game on your main monitor, you can also do that. I definitely don't think it's too late to start playing OSRS since it has a massive growing player base, and personally when it comes to community, I think this game has the best community out of every other MMO. Additionally, the content creators that cover this game are also S-tier.
I think, so like most of the time the community is really good and like, very passionate for the game. There are a few areas of the game where the community is a little bit more toxic. Some of the mini games, we'll say, are a little bit more toxic. Best in the MMO genre, I'm not sure. Just I haven't played much. I played Final Fantasy XIV, and that community seemed really awesome as well. But yeah, definitely joining a community, joining the Ironman community is like it's been really fun finding
like when I played WoW, there was maybe 5 to 10 content creators that I'd watch, but for RuneScape there's like 20 plus who I'd consider top tier. I suppose an interesting question to ask would be, is this game successful purely because of nostalgia? And personally, I don't think so, and I have put this to the test. I showed OSRS to my girlfriend last week, and at first glance she laughed at the game and didn't want to play it. I told her, play it for 5 hours and just trust me that it's good. 1 week later she's still playing and starting to get addicted, so there's got to be something more to it than just nostalgia. Usually I do a pros and cons list for
this. Is okay, so the nostalgia argument is so tough. I know Asmund and Jimmy and Peon, like I don't think it's a yes or no. I think there is definitely, the nostalgia helps in terms of getting players into it. Like even his example, he got his girlfriend into it, but he potentially had nostalgia and convinced his girlfriend to play, right? So there's still like, by association, there's nostalgia there. She would have never touched the game if there wasn't someone backing it to his level, for example. Is the game amazing and great and you can get really deep into it if you've never played before? 100%. But I wouldn't say that nostalgia is a zero factor. I think there's still some aspect, at least in terms of getting players in and players supporting the game and creating content for the game that then draw new players in. That's all, those are all players that used to play before and whatever, and etc. Maybe the newer player base isn't as nostalgic, the newer players coming in now, but the players that are driving those players in are the, players from the nostalgic era. So we still have nostalgia to thank, but it's not necessarily related to the success of any new player at this point.
For these types of videos, but I feel like I've rambled on and gushed too much about the game already.
Gushing makes me blush.
I'll just put some pros and cons on screen so you can read them for yourself.
Okay, pros. Best questing, yeah. Mini games, yeah. One of the best approaches to free-to-play? Like probably there's free to play is, you can kind of enjoy free to play as long as you like. Actually, when I was younger, I only did free to play, so I don't even have nostalgia, so to speak, for like any members content. But yeah, you could probably get a good amount. I would say getting your free-to-play quests done is probably a really good barrier. And then if you enjoy the game up until that point, probably try to get into members. Community voted updates, true. Pretty much everything passes nowadays. And that's for a couple of reasons. We kind of lowered the threshold, but generally the devs have a good sense of what's good for the game. And very rarely do they introduce something that the player base is kind of, whoa, what are you trying to do here? We don't want this at all. It happens maybe once every year or two. They haven't been perfect updates, but most of the updates have been really, really good. I gotta catch up here. Prestige items. I do like it without transmogs. I do like the idea that when you get an item, you show it off. It's like it's your item, especially if it's an Ironman. Cross-platform. Shout out to mobile. Mobile's amazing for doing like AFK grinds and stuff like that on your account. It's really good. And there are players out there who only do mobile and do the hardest content on mobile, which is insane. I mean, I've done a couple of the PVM things on mobile, and I've only done it because I'm very, very comfortable with those fights on the PC. But yeah, mobile is getting better. They're adding more plugins. They've added XP per hour, tile indicators, tile markers, ground items. So many of the important plugins have been added, so it's definitely worth it. Least pay to win, yes. Ironman 0 pay to win, 100%. I think it's even 0 pay to win in RuneScape 3, which is really good, or the newer RuneScape, which is really cool. Larger player base. The player base has been constantly growing, which is crazy. Let's see. How do we get like? There's one website that this one I believe I've looked at. So let's do it. Yeah, okay. So here, 2013, when it rebooted, look at this line. We got a huge boost from COVID, and it kind of dipped, and now it's almost to COVID levels. Like that's the total one. If we just look at the old school one, which is, you could see the RuneScape one is dropping, but old school, look at this. It's more popular than it's ever been. It's actually higher than it was for COVID. Continuing to grow, which is a testament to the game. You can progress while playing other games. Good second screen game, yeah. Oh, more pros, hello. Amazing content creators, HD graphics, sandbox MMOs. Like, I'm so surprised how few sandbox MMOs there are. Everything now is, I guess, what they call theme park, where you're kind of guided along where you're supposed to go, where RuneScape kind of just drops you in, and you gotta choose what you want to do. And it can be overwhelming at times, but they have stuff like the new player guides built in game. There are outside guides, there's the quest helper, etc. that, kind of give you a little bit of direction. Multiple skills, interacted, nostalgic soundtrack, art style. Some people might not that. The graphic options, yeah, very grindy. It's an extremely grindy game, but it's also an endless game, and you should progress at your own rate. There's no rush to get anywhere. Take your time. I know it's going to feel like you want to keep grinding. Just take your time. Do your quest. Don't do anything you don't want to do. Some people, for instance, say, let's go to Wintertot and get 99 firemaking out the gate. I am very close to maxing, and firemaking is one of my lowest skills because I don't want to do Wintertot. I do it when I feel like doing it, and I will slowly get there. Do what you feel like doing. There are going to be a few times where you might have to push through certain things that you don't like, but generally do the things you want to do, and you won't burn out as much. And take a break. Whoa, I missed that a little bit there. Whoa. PvP gets less updates than PVM. That's 100% true. Although they still get updates, it's just less common. There's also regional, there's competitions that we have that are seasonal, like Deadman mode, which is PvP focused, or leagues, which is PVM focused. Those are updates that you can also play around with, and they're really fun. But PvP definitely gets less updates overall. He says disproportionately less updates. When you think about updates, PVM versus PvP, yes. But if you think about PVM players versus PvP players in terms of population size, it's probably 90% PVM players and 10% PvP. And when we think about the updates coming out, it's probably around 90% PVM updates, 10% PvP. Maybe give or take a few percentages either way. So it's disproportionate, but it's kind of related to the population size. I still think it's important to get PvP updates. They're an important part of the community. I don't participate in most of them. Sometimes I do. It depends on the update. But yeah, and also even when there's a PVM update, to some extent it becomes a PvP update, depending on what's released. If there's a new armor release or a new weapon that's going to get used in PvP, then it becomes a PvP update because all of a sudden the meta shifts. There's something called Moon's Apparel that came out, which has a lot of different mid-level kind of gear sets. And it's a PVM update, but I've seen a lot of PvPers try to use, the Addle or the Eclipse weapon as a PvP weapon because it allows you to keep a lot of melee gear on, but still hit, 20s and 30s. Okay. Awful customer support. Yeah, kind of. It's hard to, who has good customer support, I guess. That is a good criticism, though. Big bot problem, 100%. Some of the high scores are ridiculous. Like, the first 3-4 pages, which is like 100 people, are all bots. And it's like, how is that even possible? Some of them are gold farmers, so they don't ban them. And they want to be 100% sure. I don't know. It's a problem. But I think recently they've gotten better at it. We've seen a couple things in the game where certain item values have skyrocketed because of big bot nukes. So that's big. Okay, let's continue. The hype.
Yes! 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 Oh,
Settled spoilers.
Oh my gosh, I'm really gonna die! Oh my gosh! What?
Holy shit. The mini-map you guys made it! That is some impressive coordination.
Tyler. I didn't know he played.
What the fuck? Look how laggy it is! The hit didn't even spawn!
The first Inferno cape. Inferno's amazing. Inferno's a piece of content I never ever thought I'd complete. It was just not in the cards for me. I'm like, yeah, I'll be okay with it. And I completed it. And it's just, from struggling to do the simplest type of PVM to being able to do this felt like such a massive achievement. Anybody can get there if you just take your time, get better at easier content, and you'd be surprised at what you can do.
And that's pretty much it for this video. TLDW, right now I'm completely addicted to the game, and I can't believe how many good changes there's been since the last time I played. RuneScape Ironman mode is definitely one of the most fun and addictive experiences I've ever had in an MMO. If you're a new player to old school RuneScape that never played it back in the day, I'd love to hear your experiences with the game so far in the comments below.
I love it when I hear new players.
Do you think this game is genuinely good due to its game design, or is it popular only because of nostalgia? I saw Asmongold react to a video from Jimmy about this topic recently, and I actually disagree with Asmon on this one, so it'd be cool to hear from people who got into the game only recently. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed, help us out with a like for the algorithm, and also sub to the channel for more MMO content. Social media on screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
I would love to know too, even these types of videos where they're catered towards, players who haven't played, so many of the comments end up being from people who currently play. It's like, oh, welcome. Oh, look, I could see all the content creators, etc. I would love to see more new player input just to see. But yeah, amazing video. Gave it a like. Check out Lazy Peon. Thanks for watching. This game's amazing. I love it. And hopefully we get some new players, from this video and they can become as addicted as we are. All right. See ya.